Welcome back to my channel, guys, and greetings from Morocco. I'm currently in Tangier, which is on the northern coast of Morocco. I'm actually an hour away by ferry from Spain, from Europe, which is so cool to take a ferry from Africa to Europe. Of course, I did it already, and I have some content, some shorts here on YouTube if you want to check that out. After this video, I'm in Tangier. Before this, I was in Marrakech, which is more inland. So two totally different city experiences, totally different vibe. And during this video, I want to talk about some of those differences. And I, of course, want to talk about my experience here as a gay traveler. By the way, apologies in advance if my voice sounds kind of weird and more nasally. I'm under the weather. I've been sick the last few days, which is so unfortunate when you're traveling and you don't feel 100%, especially in a place like Morocco, where I can tell you the men are very eager to meet. First, I think we should get some cultural context out of the way. We got to address that first. It is illegal to be gay in Morocco. So it's not just frowned upon. It's not just a don't ask, don't tell thing. It's punishable by law in Morocco to be gay. This is one of a few countries that I've been to where it is punishable by law. I also went to Egypt where this was the case, as well as the Emirates. That being said, I am finding the irony and the hypocrisy here that I found in those nations as well, in that the men here, as I mentioned, are constantly looking. I feel it walking down the street. I feel it on the apps based on the number, the enormous number of men who reach out on apps. And I'm not saying that to brag. I'm saying it's unusually high compared to even a place where I live in the US, Miami, which is notoriously gay friendly. I don't get messages this much. So it's very interesting to discover this disconnect between the populace and the law or the culture. Some more cultural context to share. What makes Morocco really unique as a place is that being on the northern coast of Africa, you have this blend of different cultural influences, right? So it's geographically North Africa, but culturally it's Middle Eastern. And then you also have the impact of Spanish and French culture, which goes back to colonization. What's been fascinating to me here is that in Marrakech, I mostly relied on French to get by, and it worked. Like basically everybody I spoke to who was local spoke French back. Definitely different degrees of fluency, but everybody spoke French. Here in Tangier, French has not been that helpful. In fact, there's been several times where locals have asked me, and when I say locals, I mean like a shopkeeper, somebody at a restaurant, somebody at the hotel asked me to actually speak English to them. They said English was easier for them. Also, a lot of locals have spoken to me in Spanish by default here in Tangier. So it's so interesting, right? It's the same country and everybody speaks Arabic by default locally, but you have a ton of people who are completely fluent in French, but then you have this other population that has more ease with Spanish, and others prefer to use English because, you know, English tends to be a more universal tourist language, right? So if you're in a role where you're constantly working with tourists, I think English is sort of the go-to. Anyway, that was a side tangent. But going back to the legal aspect of homosexuality here in Morocco, of course, that means you have to come to a place like Morocco being more vigilant, right? So the very first thing I did, literally at the airport in Istanbul, where I was before this, in case you missed that video, I changed my profile pictures on Grindr to more discreet pictures. So I cropped out my face or parts of my face, a lot of headless photos, just to be super careful. Now, I assumed apps like Grindr would be banned here for obvious reasons, and yet it wasn't. And it's so bizarre to me that it was the same thing in Egypt, that even though it's illegal to be gay, an app like Grindr is fully accessible. And yet in a place like Turkey, where it's not illegal to be gay, Grindr was banned. It's like there's no consistency and it makes zero sense. So the point is, you don't need a VPN like I thought you would to access the sites and apps that you want to. There have been some similarities here though in terms of the app experience compared to when I was in Istanbul right before this, in that there's a lot of escorts here on the apps, which is, you know, jolting. A lot of profiles that are like, I'm a masseuse. And Morocco and North Africa really in general, and I experienced this in Egypt as well, notorious culture for hustling and trying to get money out of people, especially visitors. So it's also important to have that in the back of your mind, both in person and if you're using apps. I assume that that's part of why there's such a big escort and masseuse culture on these apps, because it's like everybody's trying to find a way to make a buck, especially from the influx of travelers. And you definitely feel that in person walking through both Marrakech and Tangier. In Marrakech, the souks, which is the name for those iconic uh, markets, basically, where you see all kinds of things being sold: rugs, spices, clothes, all kinds of things. Those gorgeous dangling like Middle Eastern lanterns. I would say for the most part, if you just keep walking and you act like you know where you're going, even if you don't, occasionally a merchant will be like, come here, come see what I have to sell, which is, I think, totally fine. I will say people here are way nicer and friendlier than what I experienced in Egypt, where like people can get kind of aggressive and follow you around and kind of intimidate you into trying to get money out of you, which is very uncomfortable. That doesn't happen here in Morocco, but I have noticed that there are situations where if you make eye contact and you engage even a little bit, they'll try to see what they can get out of you. And so I had multiple situations where a good looking guy would lock eyes with me, and my immediate assumption or instinct was like, oh, this guy's attracted to me because he's really eyeing me down. And these weren't, by the way, these weren't guys like right at a shop, right at the entrance of a shop, clearly trying to get customers. And these were guys just like hanging out on the street. And then as they would get closer, I would hear them say, do you want a massage? Or shisha, which I learned is weed. So they are still trying to sell you something. For those of us who code that as cruising, I think these men kind of take advantage of that vulnerability or that assumption to then still try to like hustle you somehow. So the point is, based on this cultural phenomenon that I'm discussing, as a gay traveler in Morocco, you have to be really careful with in-person eye contact and cruising, because it might feel like that's what you're doing, but more so than not, I think the other party is trying to find a way to engage with you for other motives. The unfortunate thing about that, though, is then you're always kind of on guard and assuming that somebody's going to try to take advantage of you somehow. So what I found is that Moroccans are very nice and very friendly, but then you think that if somebody's friendly with you, they might just be trying to hustle you somehow. So it's so screwed up, because then like you're kind of paranoid, but then I'm sure there's also very kind people who are like put off by your defensiveness and your assumption that they're going to take advantage somehow. For example, there's a guy who reached out to me in Marrakech on Grindr, and he just seemed too good to be true. Like he was so nice, so thoughtful, so polite, that I was like, oh my God, what if this guy is just a more refined version of the guys in person who were definitely trying to hustle me? And I half jokingly, half seriously said to him, are you sure you're not an escort? I was like, something like, he seems just too great. I was so attracted to him. And again, he was so kind. I took a chance. I ended up meeting him and we had an amazing time. That's going to be my next video. You don't want to miss it. It's a story for the books. But my point is, that was a situation where I was already on guard, because of these experiences, at the Medina, at the souks, and also all the other like escorts on the apps. And yet he was lovely, but I had to take that chance, right? I had to assess, okay, this guy is worth pursuing. This opportunity is worth pursuing. So a lot of it, interestingly, I found while being in Morocco, and also even Turkey, I would say before this, you sort of have to like shut off a part of your mind and try to lean more into your gut instincts, because you're playing by different rules here. It's like a more old school culture than, let's say, the US, and you really just have to trust what feels right and what doesn't. And you don't necessarily always get it right, but with this guy, it seemed like a safe situation, so I was willing to take a chance there. And there were other guys. There was a guy I met in person in Marrakech walking down the street, and it felt like he was flirting. He was like, you look Moroccan to me. Are you sure you're not Moroccan? And I said, no, I'm French and Turkish. And he was walking with me. Again, didn't see a shop next to him. So as it's happening, I'm like, is he hitting on me, or is he going to try to spin this into a sales pitch somehow. And I just got uncomfortable. I don't know if it was a specific thing he said, but he said something about, no, you don't want to go this way. It's the wrong way. The market is this way. And then the fact that he kept following me and talking to me, I just felt uncomfortable and I walked away. That usually is considered rude. Like to me, I felt like I was rude in that moment. But I also trusted my instinct of this feels off. And by that point, somebody else had misled me with directions purposefully, which is, I learned, a very common thing in Morocco, by the way, as a way to get money from people. Like you purposely mislead them just to then get like a tip or ask for a tip for showing you the right way, which is not necessarily the right way. So that was a situation where I had to trust my instinct of forget people pleasing. This doesn't feel right, so just walk away. You don't owe anybody anything. So my conclusion with gay travel in a place like Morocco is that it's actually safest to rely on apps. First of all, there's obviously no like gay bars or gay friendly establishments or rainbow flags or anything like that, any signifiers of like you're among gay people. Although I will say, both in Marrakech and Tangier, I feel like there's so many gay men around, particularly travelers, like tourists. I can just tell. Oftentimes they're coupled up and it just feels like a gay couple. So that's interesting to me that there are so many gay people here. And I had done my research that a lot of French gay people come to Morocco. And I assume it's because it's sort of like in their minds, it's exotic, but it still feels familiar enough, like that they can get by with French, speaking French to the locals here. So I've definitely noticed that there are a lot of gay men here and a lot of French gay men. And it probably goes both ways, by the way, this exotification. I'm sure a lot of locals here, because of the more conservative culture, would rather hang out with visitors who are gay versus locals, right? Because there's less risk. It's more of a revolving door kind of thing. They probably would feel less threatened. It's probably also more exciting, right? It's somebody from a different world, a different culture. There's something about that I think people enjoy when traveling when it comes to dating and hooking up. For other gay travelers, I highly recommend just depending on apps when you're visiting Morocco. I don't say that very often with a video to say like, oh, apps here are your best bet. But I think here it is, because you can't always trust that in-person instinct of whether it's actually mutual. And I don't think you want to mess around with cruising in Morocco. People might disagree with me. Please let me know in the comments actually what you think if you are either a local in Morocco or have visited as a gay traveler. But the thing with apps is you have the time to respond, right? And you have the safety of being home, in your hotel or whatever, and sort of assessing logically the dynamic with the person. And like I said, the guys here are so eager to meet that you won't run out of options. You'll have more than enough of guys to talk to. This video has been long enough, but just to summarize, you can have an amazing time in Morocco. So much great food. I had so much couscous here. I had Moroccan tea with spearmint leaves in it. So good. Marrakech was just cinematic. Like walking through those markets, I felt like I was in a James Bond movie. Like it's just so authentic and old-fashioned, and you feel like you're transported into another world. It's a really unique place to be. You just have to really be mindful, gay or not gay, about your social interactions with people, because you can't rely on the same kinds of like social cues that you could back home, unless you're from a culture just like Morocco. Beyond that though, the people here are so kind and friendly and gracious that you as a traveler just have to be able to kind of turn on and turn off your openness with people. And you just have to fine tune that intuition of when to be kind of more accessible and vulnerable and when to kind of clam up and just go on your way. I hope this was helpful. I hope it was informative. And I can't wait to tell you guys my story about the one beautiful boy I met in Morocco. That'll be my next video. I'll catch you guys next time. And the next travel video you see from me after that video will be from Portugal. I'll be in Lisbon, Portugal for the first time ever. Catch you next time.